Welcome everyone to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. It's been a week since I recorded my first video and I want to thank you all for the great feedback you gave me. We're going to stick to the format to keeping like about 5 minutes per coin, and currently we've only talked about Ethereum and Bitcoin. The market today is interesting because we've seen Dogecoin go 2x basically in the last couple of days, which oftentimes is a signal of alt season basically. Other than that, you know me for waiting for Ethereum to pump. There's some interesting developments regarding the last video I recorded regarding ETH, and Bitcoin itself. It's still range bound on the weekly. There is some lower time frame interesting developments, but not too much has happened. We're gonna dive into it and see what we can come up with. There is some interesting levels for ETHBTC, and ETHUSD is just a very beautiful chart. We didn't talk about ETHUSD last week. We will do that this week. So let's start with Bitcoin. On the lower time frames, we can see that we tapped into the weekly support range we outlined last week. So right here, there was this little tap last week on the daily close on Sunday. So that's an interesting development. Another thing that I want to point out in this chart is that there's a behavioral change. So there is I have to take this chart, I guess, block that out, and then just grab the daily. And the daily shows us an interesting development, because basically what has been happening in June is that the market would form lower highs all the time, and it would kind of like sweep the recent high and then continue to create a lower low. It did it here too, and it did it again here, but instead of actually sweeping the high and then continuing down, it found kind of support. So it's battling for this daily order block right there, which is essentially a bearish daily order block, but if we claim it, that shows strength. Other than that, we can see that this June downtrend, which has been respected, is now being challenged too, and we need to note that there's this diagonal here that we kind of lost, and now it's trying to reclaim it. The fact that it's been hugging it kind of makes me lean to the bullish side, especially if we manage today above this order block right here and above the downtrend line here. The most bullish thing that can happen is for a close above this, kind of like a little retest and then a continuation. At that point, the local target is going to be this range here, this little last buy candle before the sell-off right here. But as we've seen many times before, once you approach resistance level right there, that's a little bit ugly drawn. Let me grab this. You can clearly gather your own data on this, but it would be, I don't know, like the fourth, maybe the fifth, maybe the sixth. I kind of lost count here. Test of that supply range. So we're gonna go back to this chart to show you the larger outbreak. So if we do like revisit these levels like 9800, 9900, we're looking at another test of supply on the high time frame too, which has been tested so many times already. And if you ask me, it's very unusual for Bitcoin to range like this for like 10 weeks at a resistance. And as I said, I do think that this is reaccumulation, and once we break this blue box right here, it's going to be hard to contain the price action. I think it kind of like runs into such an inefficiency, lack of liquidity, that will see expansion. So we're not out of the woods yet on Bitcoin, but definitely looking strong. Haven't seen any reason to become bearish on Bitcoin, and it kind of looks like the rest of the market is trying to tag along. So if we look at ETHBTC, we talked about that last week in a separate video, and basically what I said on the weekly is that if we claim this level right here, this little weekly buy candle, that I do think that we're going to continue into this supply zone, and claiming this, I do think that we're going to claim this, and that will eventually see a rally to the previous range high. So I kind of think that this structure here is the previous range. We kind of like tried to break into it. We failed, got rejected, but then kind of like started this reaccumulation pattern, which has a possibility to revisit this region, but I do think it's unlikely, especially given the recent week, the recent days development. On the daily, it's pretty clear that we've gained that weekly, and we even retested it and kind of seen a reaction on it. So I do think that, especially considering the rest of the market, seeing that there's some interest on for example, Dogecoin, I think that we're going to see the majors dominate after seeing all these smaller coins pop. So I'm very excited for that. I'm not sure, like, be careful, but you know, I've been a bull on ETH basically since September 2019, and it's been outperforming ever since. So I do think it's ready for a pop. I do think that Bitcoin is ready for a pop. I do think that both are going to pop to the upside. And I want to point you to the previous videos to look for the invalidations. So that way I can keep this one short. If you've seen the previous videos, you know where my invalidations are. And currently we're seeing confirmation, in my opinion, at least on the daily, and hopefully later on this week on the weekly too, that ETHBTC is bullish. And I do think that if ETHBTC is bullish and Bitcoin actually starts reclaiming levels as it is right now, that the entire market is bullish. But that probably is going to be a few altcoins that are going to be strong, and then mostly the majors going to be strong together with Bitcoin, and that the smaller caps will have to wait for that turn in that cycle. Generally, they don't all pump together. The small caps have already pumped, or the smaller caps, the mid caps. So I think it's time for the big shots to see a nice appreciation in price. And then there's ETHBTC, ETHUSD. It kind of looks like, I don't know, I really like the look of it. Let me set up this chart a little bit cleaner. The way I'm looking at this since basically 2017 is that this was like preliminary supply after the giant run up, and that the market kind of like distributed in this area, and that since then we've been reaccumulating under the preliminary supply right there. And there's a few things that we can see. There's a giant W right here, which hasn't confirmed yet. There is this descending broadening wedge pattern, which found support on the order block, order zone right here, which created this pretty huge rally of $74 to almost 400. And there's also this over under pattern right here, which kind of resolved, has reclaimed its breakout over pattern right here and held it, which is bullish. So the first significant resistance in this chart on the long-term range is this zone right here, this gray zone, and that is about close to $400. The other thing that we can see is that there is a nice GAN pivot right here. I'm going to remove this VIP time zone, but basically again indicates that this might be a very pivotal 2 weeks right here that we just passed. So if that kind of means that we're going to break out of this descending broadening wedge, which has a target way higher, close to the like 600 to 800 range up here, with the first trouble area around $400, kind of makes for a very bullish case long term for ETHUSD. And then the next giant pivot for this time frame would be around the end of the year, start of 2021. So you know, like, this paints a very bullish picture, but you got to consider that it is also going to take some time to manifest itself. This is a 2-week chart, so another 6 months kind of makes sense for the price appreciation and rally. So there's going to be ups and downs in between, but I do think that we're heading for $400 on ETHUSD, and once we break that, it's a very logical target to think that we're at least going to touch like 600 to 800. On the daily, it kind of looks interesting. I think Stillman pointed it out to me on Twitter. Shout out to him. There is this pattern right here, kind of looks like a little flag, and I think, you know, it's breaking out. It kind of seems like it's breaking out. So we got like this bull flag, and it's trying to run for it. So if that kind of confirms what we know, is that we have this descending broadening wedge, which probably then breaks out too, which then runs into the 2-year range boundary. And if we hit the 2-year range boundary, I'm going to assume it's going to hold for a little bit, but eventually break, because this descending broadening wedge has a target all the way up here, and then the W has a target all the way around $1,000. But that's long term, you know. Like, I don't expect that we'll see that this year, but I do think 400 and potentially 600 this year is a reasonable target. I think that ETH has been in an accumulation pattern for very long, so that's definitely a good basis for price appreciation. I think that's it for me. I do think that we're gonna see some nice rally, but I also think that if we look at Bitcoin, that this next rally, if we're going to see it, and I do think that we're going to see it, I think that's going to be into this next supply zone. If that happens, and I don't think it's going to go much higher than that, definitely if it reaches there, it's going to consolidate for a while into the end of the year, possibly retrace all the way back to 10K as a support zone, 10.5, and set up ourselves for the actual bull run, which I don't think has started yet. I think this is all part of the giant consolidation since 20K. So I do think that we hit this and then come back into this current resistance and then pump from there, which is going to be next year. So I think that was my entire market update. Alts are looking decent, and I don't know, until next week, I guess. Cheers.